The twin suns of Tarvax 9 were setting, casting long shadows across the alien market. The dusty wind carried the smell of rust, oil, and something sour. Traders packed their stalls, shouting prices in different languages. Metal parts, weapons, dried food, and even small animals were on display. A human man walked through the crowd, his face tired but alert. His name was Dax Relan, a freelance problem solver, part mercenary, part delivery man. He had just finished a dangerous mission for a rich alien merchant named Gralthan. Dax was supposed to get paid in credits. A lot of them, but when he arrived at Gralthan's shop, the merchant grinned with yellow teeth and said, "Ah, human. So sorry, no credits today. Business was bad." Dax narrowed his eyes. "We had a deal. I risked my life for that package." Gralthan waved his fat hand. Yes. But I have something better than credits. A gift." From the back of the shop, 2 guards dragged someone forward. It was a young alien woman, chained at the wrists and ankles. She was tall, with silver blue skin and long white hair that was dirty and tangled. Her clothes were torn, and her face was blank. But her eyes burned with something Dax couldn't explain. "She's yours," Gralthan said, laughing. "A rare model. Worth much more than the credits I owe you." Others in the market began to laugh too. "Useless girl. She won't even speak. Probably broken." Dax looked at her. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She didn't look scared. She stood tall, even with chains on her arms and dirt on her face. "She's a slave?" Dax asked. Gralthan nodded. "Captured from a dead ship. No family, no claim. Total loss unless you take her." Dax looked around. The crowd wanted him to laugh. They wanted him to walk away or beat her. That's what most would do, but Dax wasn't like most people. He stepped forward slowly. The girl raised her head and looked at him directly. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent. Not empty like most slaves. Then something strange happened. She whispered a few words in a soft voice. Dax couldn't understand the language, but her tone was not weak. It was commanding, like she had once given orders. Gralthan laughed again. "See, crazy girl, talks to herself." Dax didn't laugh. Instead, he turned to the merchant and said, "Fine, I'll take her." The crowd gasped. A few shouted, "Stupid human," or "You've been tricked," but Dax didn't care. He threw his shoulder bag over his back and grabbed the chain gently. The girl didn't pull away. She followed without a word. They walked through the market as the crowd stared. Some laughed. Some shook their heads. Back at his small ship, Dax sat her on the floor and closed the door. He offered her water. She took it carefully, her hands shaking. "Can you speak standard?" He asked. She stayed silent. "What's your name?" Still silent. "Do you understand me?" This time, she gave a small nod. He sat across from her. "I don't know what your story is, but I don't treat people like property. You're safe here." She looked at him again, long and slow. Her eyes seemed to scan his face like a computer. Then she whispered just one word in standard. "Why?" Dax blinked. "Why what? Why, help me?" she asked, her voice soft and dry. Dax gave a small smile. "Because nobody else would." The ship's engines hummed as they prepared to leave. The planet. Dax stood and walked to the controls, but the girl didn't move. She stayed on the floor, still chained, still silent, but her eyes were different now. They were watching him closely, studying him. Waiting. As the ship rose into the dark sky, Dax couldn't shake the feeling that this girl wasn't what she seemed. Far away, in a hidden corner of the universe, a royal bounty signal quietly lit up, indicating that a missing VIP had just come online. But Dax didn't know that yet. Not yet. The lights inside Dax's ship were dim. The silence was deep, almost too deep. But then, click, click, click. Dax's eyes opened. That sound wasn't the engine. It was coming from the back of the ship. He quietly grabbed his blaster and walked down the narrow hallway. The sound was steady, metallic, precise. He turned the corner and froze. The alien girl, still chained, was on her knees in front of the control panel. Her fingers were moving fast, tapping codes like a trained tech officer. "What the hell are you doing?" Dax asked sharply. She didn't flinch. She kept typing for 3 more seconds, and then stopped. Slowly, she turned to look at him. "I was checking the nav systems," she said softly. Dax blinked. "You speak standard now?" "I always could." He lowered the blaster, confused. "You said nothing before." "You didn't need to know anything until now." Dax sighed and leaned against the wall. "You're not a normal slave, are you?" "No," she said. He waited, but she didn't say more. Her calmness was starting to bother him. She stood up. Her chains clinked with each movement. Despite her condition, she moved with grace, like a dancer or a soldier. Dax noticed small details now. The way her back stayed straight, how she scanned every room before entering. She didn't act like someone broken. "You're military?" he asked. She looked away. "Something like that. Name?" She didn't answer. "I'm not asking again." After a pause, she whispered, "Zalira." Dax repeated it quietly. "Lira. All right, Zalira. I don't know what kind of mess you're in, but I don't like surprises on my ship." "Then prepare yourself," she said coldly. "Because I'm full of them." Dax narrowed his eyes. "What were you doing with the nav system?" "I was checking the nearby jump points." "For what?" She walked past him, her chains dragging softly. "To see if anyone is following us." He followed her back to the main cabin. "Are they?" She looked at him. "Not yet. Who would follow you?" She stared out the ship's front window. Stars were glowing like diamonds in the darkness. Then she whispered something that made the hair on Dax's neck rise. "The people who want me dead." They flew in silence for a long time. Dax made basic food and gave her some. She didn't eat much. Instead, she asked questions. "How long have you been a freelancer? Why do you travel alone? Why did you accept me as payment?" Dax gave simple answers. But one thing was clear, she was testing him. Later, she found an old blanket in the supply room and curled up in the corner. She didn't ask for a bed. She didn't complain. Dax couldn't sleep. Something about her didn't add up. A slave who types command codes. A slave who checks star routes. A slave who knows someone wants her dead. He sat near her, watching quietly. As she pretended to sleep, her breathing was steady. Too steady. "I know you're awake," he said softly. "I know you're watching." She answered without opening her eyes. "Tell me the truth," he said. "Who are you really?" This time, she opened her eyes but didn't speak. Instead, she asked him a question. "If you knew I wasn't a slave, if you knew I was something more, would you still protect me?" Dax didn't answer right away. He looked at her, really looked. Not just the dirt or the chains, but the way she held herself. Like someone born to lead. He leaned back and said, "Depends. On what? On how dangerous your truth is." Later that night, as Dax finally dozed off in the cockpit chair, a hidden signal blinked to life deep inside the ship's system. A code hidden under layers of old software was triggered by Zalira's earlier search. Far away, on a royal satellite, an alert appeared. "Princess Zalira. Status detected. Coordinates logged." And somewhere in the darkness of space, a warship began to turn. It started with a whisper. Not from her lips, but from deep space. A strange vibration rippled through the ship's hull. Not mechanical, not natural. It was a signal coded and quiet, like a breath carried through the void. Dax woke up instantly. The ship's sensors were blinking. "Unidentified object approaching fast," the system warned. He jumped to the controls. Where the hell did that come from? We're in empty space. But it wasn't empty anymore. A shadow moved across the stars, long and sharp. A ship, bigger than Dax's, sleek, silent, and hungry. Dax open comes. Unknown vessel, identify. Yourself. No answer. He looked back at Celira, who stood calmly behind him, her hands still bound in chains. Her eyes narrowed. It's them, she said softly. Who? She stepped forward. The ones I told you about. They found us. Before Dax could respond, red light flooded the cockpit. Target locked. The first blast came without warning. Boom! The ship shook violently. Sparks flew. Alarms screamed. Dax struggled to keep the controls stable. They're not trying to kill us, he shouted over the noise. They're disabling us. Zelira's face turned cold. They want me alive. How comforting. Another blast. The shields dropped to 30%. We can't fight them, Dax said. We run. No, Zelira said. They'll track us no matter where we go. Then give me options, Princess, Dax snapped without thinking. She froze. You know? She asked. Dax glanced at her. I guessed. You're not good at hiding your royalty. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Then let me help. Unchain me, Dax hesitated. Trust me, she said. Or we both die. He tossed the key across the cabin. She unlocked herself in seconds like she had done it before. Zelira rushed to the secondary console. Her fingers flew across the screen. What are you doing? Dax asked, overriding their tracker signal with a false echo. But I need to stall them. Stall how? She looked up. Talk to them. Pretend you're dumb. Done, Dax said. And opened a channel. This is a civilian trader ship, Dust Feather. You hit the wrong guy, friend. A voice replied, cold, robotic. Release the passenger. You are not the target. She's not a passenger. She's my pet. Incorrect. You have 10 seconds. Dax looked at Zelira. Make it fast. She finished typing and hit a button. Outside, the pirate ship suddenly jerked, like it had lost something. Their tracker display spun wildly. They couldn't see the Dust Feather anymore, Zelira whispered. Now. Dax punched the thrusters. The ship roared as it blasted forward, spinning through a tiny asteroid field. Chased, dodging rocks, the size of cars. One hit and they'd be space dust. Dax gritted his teeth. We need cover. Zelira scanned the map. There's a dead moon ahead, iron rich. It can block their scans for a few minutes. Plotting course. The pirate ship fired again, missing by inches. One blast hit the engine wing. They lost speed. Dax cursed. I can't outrun them like this. Zelira stood beside him. Then we hide. They flew toward the dead moon and vanished behind its gray surface. The moment they landed, the ship powered down. No lights. No sounds. No life. Inside the dark cabin, only the sound of their breathing filled the space. Dax wiped sweat from his forehead. Remind me never to accept slaves as payment again. Celira smiled just a little. You didn't accept a slave, she said. You accepted a war. He looked at her. What are they? Bounty hunters? No, worse. They work for the council that overthrew my family. I'm not just missing. I'm a threat, and now I'm tied to you. Yes, she said softly, you are. Above them, the enemy ship circled like a shark, scanning, waiting. But for now, it didn't find them, and inside the small ship on the dead moon, a bond began to form, not of love, not yet, but of trust born in fire. Zelira closed her eyes and whispered one word under her breath. Thank you. Dax heard it, but he said nothing. He just looked at her and wondered what he had really brought aboard. The air inside the ship was cold. But it wasn't the metal walls or dead power systems that chilled Dax. It was her silence. Zelira sat alone on the floor, her white hair falling around her shoulders. She stared at nothing. Her breathing was slow, calm, too calm. Dax watched her from the pilot's seat. They had been hiding behind the dead moon for 2 hours. The enemy ship was still circling above, scanning the surface. Every time Dax looked, At her, he felt the same strange feeling. She didn't act like a prisoner. She didn't even act like someone who had just escaped death. She acted like someone used to danger, like a leader. Dax finally broke the silence. "You said you're a threat to them," he said. "Why?" Zalira didn't move, but her voice came softly. "Because I'm supposed to be dead." Dax leaned forward. "Start talking." She slowly turned her head. Her eyes were sharper now, like knives hidden behind beauty. "My full name," she said, "is Zalira Kareth Valtari, daughter of High Queen Serelna. I was born in the Sky Palace of Orthus Prime." Dax frowned. He had heard that name before. Orthus Prime, a planet of legends. A kingdom lost after a civil war 5 years ago. "Impossible," he said. "They said the royal bloodline was wiped out." She gave a bitter smile. "That's what they wanted people to believe." "What happened?" "My mother was poisoned. My brothers were betrayed. I was smuggled out by loyal guards. The ship that carried me was attacked. I was the only survivor." Dax stared at her. "And they sold you in the slave market?" She nodded once. "The guards who saved me didn't know who to trust. We crash-landed. I was wounded. A scavenger found me and sold me like garbage." For the first time, Dax saw something crack in her. Her eyes filled with quiet anger. "They put a price on a princess," she whispered, "and no one even blinked." Dax sat in silence for a moment, then asked, "Why didn't you tell me all this before?" "Because I didn't know if I could trust you. And now?" She met his eyes. "You stayed when others would have walked away. You fought for me. That means something." He didn't say anything for a while. Then he asked, "What happens now?" Zalira looked up toward the ship above them, still hunting. "I need to get back to Orthus Prime. If I appear before the old council, I can call for the right of blood claim." "What is that?" "A test. If I pass, the people will know I'm real. And the traitors who rule now, they'll panic." "You think they'll just let you walk in?" She smiled. "No, they'll try to kill me before I get there." Dax shook his head. "Sounds like I picked the worst payment in the galaxy." She gave him a soft look. "Or maybe the most powerful one." Suddenly, the ship shook. Dax jumped to the console. "They're landing nearby. They found our heat trail." Zalira stood fast. "Then we move now. I have a contact." "Who?" "An old diplomat. If he's still alive, he'll hide us." "Location?" She took the co-pilot seat and typed coordinates into the screen. The system flashed. "Orthus route code, royal clearance required." Dax raised a brow. "You have royal codes?" Zalira pressed her hand to the panel. A soft chime answered. "Clearance accepted, Princess Zalira." Dax stared at her. She really was a princess. As the engines roared to life and they lifted off the dead moon, Dax saw the enemy ship turning toward them. "Hold on," he said. "They won't let us go easy." Zalira tightened her grip on the seat. "Let them try." The chase began again, but this time, Dax wasn't carrying a slave. He was carrying the last hope of a fallen kingdom. Far away, in a cold hall on Orthus Prime, a tall figure in a dark cloak stood in front of a screen. He saw the signal. Princess Zalira was alive, his lips curled into a cruel smile. "So, the little ghost returns." He turned to his guards. "Send the Black Blades. Bring me her. Head." It wasn't the silence that made Dax uneasy. It was the change in the silence. The stars outside his ship still sparkled. The engine still hummed. Zalira still sat beside him, calm and focused, but something in the air had shifted, like a storm waiting behind a smile. Zalira leaned over the map screen, her finger tracing the route to Orthus Prime. "We'll reach the border system in 6 hours, she said. "My contact should be hiding in the old diplomatic sector on the moon of Velterra." Dax kept his eyes on the radar. No ships in sight. No warnings, and yet his gut twisted. You're too calm, he muttered. She raised a brow. Would you prefer I panic? I'd prefer you admit we're being hunted. She smiled faintly. We're always being hunted. Just then, the screen blinked. A soft beep. Unmarked signal detected. Dax's eyes narrowed. There. Zalira. Stared. That's not a ship. The signal was fast, like a spark skipping across empty space. Then gone. Someone's watching us, Dax said. No, not watching, Zalira replied. Marking us. Dax's grip tightened on the control. Stick, you know what this is, don't you? She nodded. The Black Blades. Dax had heard whispers in pirate bars and backwater outposts. The Black Blades weren't bounty hunters. They were eliminators, silent killers trained by the traitor regime. They didn't capture, they erased. Suddenly the cabin lights flickered. Systems lagged. What's happening? Dax snapped. They're jamming us, Zalira said. The radar lit up. One ship. No ID. Close. Too close. From the darkness behind them, a sleek black ship melted out of space, silent, cold, and shaped like a dagger. Dax pulled hard on the controls, but it was too late. Bang! A sharp blast hit the rear wing. Systems dropped to 40%. I can't outrun this one, he shouted. Then we don't run, Zalira said. We lure. Into what? A funeral? My contact has a defense grid. If we reach Valterra, we can trap them. Dax looked at her. You better be right. The chase was brutal, through asteroid rings, across gravity wells, between shattered moons. The Black Blade ship moved like a shadow, slipping between rocks with ghost-like precision. Dax was sweating. His hands ached. And still it followed. As Valterra came into view. Zalira activated a small transmitter. Aaron, this is Zalira Valtari. If you still live, light the sky. For 5 long seconds, there was nothing. Then in the distance, a string of old satellites lit up, pulsing in sequence. Dax shouted, What is that? A welcome, Zalira said. The moment their ship crossed the moon's orbit, the satellites fired a wide-band shock pulse. The Black Blade ship froze. Its systems jammed. It spun dead in space and vanished into the rocky field. Dax crash-landed on the icy plains of Valterra. Smoke filled the cabin. Alarms rang. But they were alive, and waiting outside, surrounded by snow and night, stood a tall figure in a thick robe. He removed his hood, a gray-skinned alien with golden eyes and a scar across his face. Zalira stepped out and bowed her head slightly. Aaron, you look older. He laughed once. You look dead. But I see that's not true. His eyes turned to Dax. And who is this? Zalira glanced at Dax. My only ally. They followed Aaron into a hidden bunker below the snow. Inside, warm lights flickered. Maps covered the walls. Old tech blinked. Dax finally relaxed, just a little. But the peace didn't last. Ein pulled up a screen. Message from Orthus Prime. Princess Zalira confirmed alive. Dead or alive, 100,000 credits. Dax stared. They've put a bounty on her. Zalira said nothing. Aaron sighed. You're out of time, child. If you don't rise now, they'll bury your name forever. She nodded slowly. Then she looked at Dax. You've come this far. But it's only going to get worse. He didn't flinch. I've had worse, he said. Let's bring down a kingdom. The city didn't welcome her. As the royal palace of Orthus Prime came into view, Zalira felt the pain return, not in her body, but in her heart. Tall towers once built by her ancestors now flew the flags of the enemy. The gates that once opened at her command were now sealed with steel and lies. Beside her, Dax tightened the strap on his shoulder rifle. You sure this is a good idea? He asked. No, Zalira whispered. But it's the only one we have. They weren't flying in openly. Aaron had arranged a secret way in through the old servant tunnels that ran beneath the palace. Dax, Zalira, and a small team of loyalists moved quietly through the darkness. The tunnels were tight and cold, lined with broken lights and forgotten memories. Salira ran her hand across the wall. "I played in here when I was a child," she said softly. Dax gave her a sideways glance. "And now you sneak in like a thief," she smiled sadly. "Every ruler is a thief when the crown is taken by force." They reached the end of the tunnel. A steel door blocked their path. On the other side was the Hall of Claim, the royal chamber where leaders proved their bloodline before the people. Salira turned to Dax. "Once I step inside, you must not speak." "Not unless I'm in danger," Dax nodded. "What if you're in danger the whole time? Then I'll speak for both of us." The door opened with a long rusty hiss dot inside. The Hall of Claim was full. Guards in dark armor lined the walls. At the center sat the Council of Regents, the traitors who had ruled since the fall of her family. They didn't rise. They didn't smile, but the crowd behind them gasped. A woman in chains walked into the light. No longer a slave. No longer silent. Princess Salira had returned. A councilman stood. "You are dead. You are a lie. What proof do you bring?" Salira lifted her hand. A small silver band, her royal mark shone on her finger. Then she spoke in the ancient tongue, reciting the oath of the first queen. Her voice echoed across the chamber. People began to whisper. An old priest stepped forward with a scanner. He held it over her hand. It blinked green. "Royal match confirmed," he announced. "She is of the blood." The chamber exploded into shouting. Some cheered, some demanded her arrest, and one councilman raised his hand. "Silence!" He turned to Salira. "You come with a human," he said. "A soldier of the wilds, a mercenary. What is he to you?" Dax stepped forward. Before he could speak, Salira raised her hand. "He is under my protection," she said. "He saved me when none of you would. He stood with me when my name meant nothing. He is no servant, he is my shield." The council murmured. Whispers ran like fire through the crowd. Another councilwoman narrowed her eyes. "If you truly wish to return, you must denounce him. The throne belongs to the people, not to outworlders." Dax's hands clenched. Salira didn't move. "You want me to choose between my crown and the man who saved my life?" she said. The councilman sneered. "Yes." Time froze. Dax looked at her. "Do it," he said quietly. "Say what you need to say. I'm not here for a crown." She stared at him for a long moment. Then she walked to the center of the hall. She raised her voice. "I am Salira Valtari, and I owe no loyalty to traitors. I will not denounce the one who gave me freedom. If that means I lose the throne, then so be it." Gasps echoed. Some in the crowd stood, placing hands over their hearts. Others shouted in rage. But in that moment, she was queen again. And just then, an explosion rocked the hall. Smoke burst through the windows. Screams filled the chamber. Dax grabbed Salira and dove to cover her. A sharp voice echoed from above. A tall shadow stepped through the smoke, armor black as night, eyes glowing red. It was him, the assassin lord of the Black Blades. "You should have stayed dead," he growled. Dax raised his gun. Salira stood beside him, not a princess now, not a slave, not alone, but a warrior with a human soldier by her side. The throne room was on fire, not from flames, but from fear, smoke, and steel drawn in anger. The assassin lord of the Black Blades stepped forward, his black armor shining with smoke and dust. Behind him, 3 masked soldiers emerged like shadows from the broken windows. Dax stood between them and Salira, gun raised, eyes sharp. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She stood tall, royal blood shining in her posture. "Your time is over, princess," the assassin said. "You belong in the grave." Salira stepped forward beside Dax. "Then come and bury me yourself." The battle exploded without warning. Blaster fire cracked. Guards fell. The council scattered. Dax moved fast, dodging, firing, protecting. He fought like a man with nothing to lose. And someone worth dying for. Zalira wasn't helpless. She picked up a fallen staff and swung like a trained fighter, every movement clean and sharp. Dax left. She shouted. He spun and shot an enemy mid-air. Nice call, Your Highness. Less talking, more saving my life. Suddenly, the assassin lord leapt toward them. Dax fired twice, missed. The black sword came down clang. Zalira blocked it with the staff, but it shattered from the force. She fell back. The assassin turned to finish her, but Dax tackled him from behind. They rolled across the floor, crashing into royal pillars. The assassin pinned him. You think you can protect her? You're just a filthy human. Yeah, Dax growled, but I'm her human. He headbutted the assassin, grabbed a knife from his boot, and stabbed him through the weak joint in his armor. The assassin roared, then collapsed. Silence. Smoke curled into the broken sky windows. The black blades were dead, and Zalira stood in the center of the hall, blood on her cheek, crown in her hand. The people returned slowly, eyes wide, hearts racing. They had seen the truth with their own eyes. She had fought, she had bled. She had led, and the people began to kneel. Later that night, in the old royal garden, Dax sat on a stone bench. He was bruised, tired, bleeding from a cut on his temple. But alive, Zalira walked toward him, now wearing a clean robe, her hair braided with silver threads. She didn't look like a slave anymore. She looked like a queen, but her eyes were still the same. She sat beside him. You didn't have to. Stay, she said. I didn't plan to, Dax replied. I just couldn't leave you. She looked down. You're not one of us, she said softly. I know. You have no title, no rank, no bloodline. I know. Then why are you still here? He turned to her. Because when I looked at you in that cage, I didn't see a slave. I saw a fire, and somehow that fire lit something inside me. Zalira was quiet for a long moment. Then she placed the silver crown beside him on the bench and said the words that shook his heart. I don't want a throne alone. The next day, in front of millions watching across the stars, Queen Zalira Valteri was crowned. But when she took her first step onto the throne platform, she reached out her hand and pulled Dax up beside her, not as a guard, not as a servant, but as a royal consort. The crowd roared. History was rewritten. A human and a queen, a slave no longer, a princess reborn. And in the corners of the galaxy, where hatred still stirred, new enemies whispered, the human changed everything. And the stars whispered back, yes, he did.